Hi, folks. I'm Peter Lemieux, batter sports and rounding third. I tell baseball stories. I'm going to start off with an example today. In the year 2011, some of you may not remember or even care about 2011, there was a song that was the most popular song of the year. It won all the awards. I'm going to tell you the name of the song, and most of you are going to say, I don't know what he's talking about. It was called Somebody I Used to Know. If you ever care to look it up and play it, you'll say, oh, yeah, I remember that song. It was recorded by a guy named, I thought his name was Gotye, Gotye. I have since found out that it was Gotye. Well, what's his point? We never heard from Gotye again. That was it for Gotye. One hit, boom. We call that a one-hit wonder. Today, I'm going to tell you a story, a great story, about a baseball one-hit wonder. So the year is 1976. And in 1976, we had a guy that captured the heart of all baseball fans. His name was Mark the Bird Fidrych. So let me tell you how I got acquainted with Mark the Bird Fidrych. In 1976, I was selling insurance, and we would go into people's homes in the evening and talk to them about their insurance. I was training a new agent, which meant we would go out and talk to people. After that, I wanted to review what happened on that appointment right away. So I would take the person to something that was open where we could talk about it. The date was June 28th, 1976, and we stopped at a watering hole, okay? Nursing a beer. I was into my, teaching this guy how to become a great salesman and all this and that. In the background on the TV, there was a baseball game going on. Okay. But as I looked at this, something crazy was happening. First of all, Monday Night Baseball, June 28th, the stadium is packed to overflowing and everyone's screaming their heads off. And I said to the guy, I think there's a no-hitter going on. So I focused my attention. The Detroit Tigers were home against the New York Yankees. The Detroit Tigers had Mark the Bird Fidrych pitching that night. And I'm watching this guy. He was tall, skinny, curly hair sticking out the sides of his hat. He reminded people of Big Bird, which is how he got the name. Well, I'm looking at the game, and there's not a no-hitter going on, but the kid's pitching a good game. He ended up winning the game 5-1. But as he's pitching the game, I see why people are excited. This guy was constant motion. When he was on the mound, he would talk to the baseball. He would take the baseball and aim it at the plate like he was going to throw a dart before he started his windup. When he got an out, he would circle the mound, pointing at the player who got the ball and like cheering for him. He brought passion and excitement to the game. He did other things. Before the inning, he would go out early. He would go out before the pitch clock. On his hands and knees, he would manicure the mound to get it at just the level he wanted. He talked to the ball. Well, they won the game 5-1, and the fans did not leave. They stayed in the stadium, and they made this goofy-looking kid come out and tip his hat. That was the excitement of Mark the Bird Fidrych. So let me truck up a little bit here. He was from a town called Northborough, Massachusetts. He went to Algonquin Regional High School, played on the baseball team. At the end of the season, he got a phone call from the Tigers that they had drafted him in the 10th round. Only Mark thought he was being drafted into the Army because he had no idea that any major league team would ever be interested in him. He signed a contract, pitched in the minors in 75, and in 76 made the Tiger team. However, from April 20th to when the season started, almost through mid-May, Mark the Bird Fidrych only pitched one inning. They decided, for whatever reason, to put him in the starting rotation. In the third game he pitched, he held the Indians hitless for 6 innings and ended with a two-hit, 2-1 victory. Struck out 5, walked 1. After every out, he would circle the mound and point to the players. And then it just kept growing from there. Let me just tell you a few things. May 31st, an 11 inning complete game victory over the Brewers. A few days later, June 5th, another 11 inning complete game victory over the Rangers. And then I saw in June this wonderful victory over the Yankees. He went to Baltimore and drew a crowd of 51,000 people to shut out the Orioles 9-0. Um, July 9th, 51,000 at Tiger Stadium to shut out. No, he lost that game 1-0, but he was pitching well. He was exciting. When he'd go on the road, if he was pitching, the crowds would be huge. In fact, teams were calling the Tigers, asking them to change their rotation so they could get Fidrych pitching when they came into the stadium. Well, as it worked out, Mark Fidrych, in it first after 10 starts, he had a record of 9-1 with an earned run average of 185. He was so good, he started the All-Star game as a rookie. That had only been done once in history. Now, he gave up 2 runs in the first inning and lost the All-Star game, but after he just went back to where he was. 3 days after the All-Star game, he won his 10th game with a 1-0 victory over the A's. 4 days later, a 13th start, the Minnesota Twins released homing pigeons before the game to try and distract him. Didn't work. Won the game. His record was sitting at 11-2. Now, he did pitch in July consecutive 6-hit complete games. He won 1 and he lost 1. He then went as a year wore on, he actually went on a losing streak where he lost, I think, 3 or 4 games in a row, but got it back. At the end of the season, he beat the Indians 2 times, and in his last start, he picked up his 19th win, beating the Brewers 4-1. Mark Fidrych finished the year with 19 wins, an earned run average of 234. He led the major leagues, okay, in wins and ERA, had the lowest whip in baseball. And just amazing things happened that year because Mark Fidrych made baseball exciting. Whether you're playing for him or against him, it was just fun to watch the guy. In his 18 home starts, the fan average was 33,000 in attendance. When he wasn't pitching, Detroit averaged 13,000. So that was the sensation, unfortunately, the one-hit wonder of Mark Fidrych. Because in 1977, after a few weeks, 6 weeks, he said he felt his arm go dead. At the time, he had a 6-2 record, and he rested, came back toward the end of the year, was not as effective. He finished 6-4 with a 289 earned run average. What we found out is that Mark the Bird Fidrych had torn his rotator cuff. And the doctors did not know what to do with that. What he did do for the next 3 years is try to pitch, but he was nowhere near as effective. And basically, we remember him for that 1 year. We also remember Mark as just a simple, not pretentious person. They had him do announcing on Monday Night Baseball, and he proved that he really didn't know that much about baseball and baseball players. When Al Michaels asked him, how would you pitch to Richie Hebner playing for the Phillies? And Mark said, who's Richie Hebner? Richie Hebner played in the National League, and Mark Fidrych had never heard of him because he didn't really follow baseball. And that's kind of the simplicity. In his one season, Mark Fidrych made $16,000. But he had been such a sensation, the Tigers awarded him a $25,000 bonus and signed him to a 3-year contract for $255,000, which for Mark was enough to take care of him for the rest of his life because he lived so simply. He drove a used car, lived in a small apartment outside of Detroit, and was really said he would be happy fixing cars and going back to Northborough, Massachusetts, which of course he ended up doing. After a few years, married his high school sweetheart in 1986, purchased a 107-acre farm. He and his wife worked the farm. They had one daughter. And on the side, Mark fixed trucks. He would have companies and people bring trucks to him, and in his barn, he worked on trucks. On Saturdays, what he did is he helped his mother-in-law in her business, which was a diner. Mark would go down to the diner on Saturday, flip eggs, and help her make money. And as far as we can tell, Mark Fidrych never missed the limelight. He loved his life. Mark Fidrych died when he was only 54 years old or something like that. Somebody came over to the farm to talk to him, just to shoot the breeze. Walked into the barn, and Mark was dead under a truck. What had happened is something called a spinning power takeoff shaft of the truck had caught his shirt and suffocated him. And he was working alone. It wasn't until this guy showed up that they found he was dead at a relatively young age. Funeral in Northborough, Massachusetts, attended by thousands of people. And then baseball came in. I want to tell you a story before I conclude this. Craig Nettles was a power-hitting third baseman for the Yankees. And he was facing Fidrych one day, and Fidrych was talking to the ball. So Craig Nettles took his bat and talked to the bat. After the game, he said, "I told the bat, you're going to hit this ball and it's going to go over the fence." Well, Nettles struck out. And then he said to the people, "My bat was made in Japan and it didn't understand English." But it was stories like this and the sensation. I just can't express adequately how much fun it was to watch baseball when the Bird was pitching. In 2009, the Tigers made a tribute to Mark Fidrych. They had his daughter come out, she was a grown adult now, to throw out the first pitch. And the stadium was filled, and people were remembering what a wonderful memory he had given us. So Jessica Fidrych, his daughter, before she threw out the first pitch, got down on her knees and manicured the mound, just like her daddy did, talked to the ball, and tossed it in. And it was just a wonderful, wonderful day at the old ballpark. Mark Fidrych was really a great guy. He was what, you would want, I think, in a son, someone who's not pretentious and not throwing himself out. He would not have survived in the era of social media because he could have cared less. He just went out and pitched, had some success, and if that didn't work out, he was fine working on trucks and working in the diner. Very, very happy man. So that's my story of Mark the Bird Fidrych. I hope you enjoyed it. Like, subscribe, but even more, tell me your story. Tell me what you remember about the Bird or other characters that we could call a one-hit wonder. This was a great one. I just have the fondest memories of watching him beat the Yankees in a sold-out crowd on a Monday night, and the crowd just cheering like they had won the World Series, all because the skinny guy talked to a baseball. I hope you enjoyed it, folks. Look forward to seeing you again soon. I'm Peter Lemieux with Rounding Third. Have a great day.